The morning sun filtered through the frost-covered windows of Murphy's coffee house, casting geometric patterns across the worn wooden floors. Sarah Mitchell stood near the entrance, her crutches supporting her weight as she watched her daughter Emma wave enthusiastically at someone across the room. The little girl's pink winter coat was slightly too big for her, a hand-me-down from a cousin, but her smile was enormous, the kind of pure, uninhibited joy that only children possess. Sarah's heart clenched as she followed Emma's gaze to a man sitting alone at a corner table. He was in his mid-30s, dressed in a navy suit that suggested a business professional, with kind eyes and a warm smile that reached them as he waved back at Emma. Sarah had learned to be cautious, especially in this unfamiliar city, but there was something genuine about this stranger's response to her daughter's greeting. They had arrived in Seattle just 3 weeks ago, fleeing a situation that still gave Sarah nightmares. The accident that had shattered her leg was actually a blessing in disguise. It had given her the medical documentation and the courage to finally leave her abusive marriage. The crutches were temporary, the doctor had assured her, but the emotional scars would take much longer to heal. "Mommy, that nice man waved at me," Emma announced, her 7-year-old voice filled with the excitement of making a new friend. Her blue knit hat sat slightly askew on her blonde curls, and her mittens dangled from the strings attached to her coat sleeves. "I see that, sweetheart," Sarah replied, gently guiding Emma toward an empty table near the back. She had exactly $8.37 in her wallet, enough for one coffee and a small hot chocolate for Emma. They had been walking for over an hour in the December cold because Sarah couldn't afford the bus fare and still have enough for their warm drinks. As they settled into their seats, Sarah noticed the man from the corner table approaching. Her muscles tensed instinctively, her hand moving protectively to Emma's shoulder. But his body language was non-threatening, his hands visible, his pace casual. "Excuse me," he said softly, stopping a respectful distance from their table. "I hope I'm not intruding, but I couldn't help but notice your daughter's wonderful wave. I'm David Richardson." He didn't extend his hand, seeming to sense Sarah's wariness. "I know this might seem unusual, but I was just about to order another coffee, and I noticed you hadn't ordered yet. Would you allow me to buy you both something? No strings attached, just a small act of kindness on a cold morning." Sarah's first instinct was to refuse. She had learned the hard way that kindness often came with conditions, with expectations, with a price tag that wasn't immediately visible. But something in David's eyes stopped her automatic rejection. There was a sadness there, a depth of understanding that spoke of his own battles fought and won. "That's very kind of you, but we're fine," Sarah began, but Emma interrupted. "Mommy, I'm really cold, and my tummy hurts," the little girl said quietly, her earlier enthusiasm dimmed by hunger and exhaustion. David's expression shifted to one of concern, but he didn't push. "I understand your hesitation. I really do. How about this, I'll order for you at the counter, pay for it, and you can pick it up yourself. That way, you don't have to interact with me at all. I've been where you might be, and sometimes a cup of coffee can make all the difference." Before Sarah could respond, he had already turned and walked to the counter. She watched as he spoke to the barista, pulled out his wallet, and left what looked like a generous bill on the counter. Then, true to his word, he returned to his own table without approaching them again. A few minutes later, the barista called out, "Order for Sarah and Emma." Sarah's eyes widened. How had he known their names? Then she realized, Emma must have said her name when they came in, and Sarah had responded. She had been so focused on finding a table that she hadn't noticed the man paying attention. Reluctantly, Sarah made her way to the counter with Emma. What awaited them there made her breath catch in her throat. There wasn't just a coffee and a hot chocolate. There were 2 breakfast sandwiches, a plate of warm cinnamon rolls, a fruit cup for Emma, and even a small bag that the barista handed her with a knowing smile. "The gentleman said these are for you," the young woman behind the counter said softly. "And he wanted me to tell you that the bag contains some gift cards to a few local stores. He said no one should go hungry or cold in December." Tears sprang to Sarah's eyes before she could stop them. Emma tugged at her coat, confused by her mother's emotional response but excited about the feast before them. Sarah looked over at David's table, but he was deliberately focused on his laptop, giving them privacy in their moment of need. They carried the food back to their table, and as Emma dove into the cinnamon roll with the appetite of a child who hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon, Sarah examined the contents of the bag. Inside were 5 gift cards, one to the local grocery store for $100, one to a children's clothing store for $75, one to a pharmacy for $50, one to a department store for $100, and one to this very coffee shop for $50. There was also a handwritten note on a business card. The card identified David as a family attorney specializing in domestic violence cases. The note read, "I don't know your story, but I recognize the look of someone trying to rebuild. My mother escaped with me and my sister when I was 8. A stranger helped us in a coffee shop in Chicago. I promised myself I would pay it forward. If you need legal help, my consultation is always free. If not, that's okay too. You're stronger than you know, David." Sarah's hands shook as she read the words. How had he seen through her so clearly? How had he known exactly what she needed, not just materially but emotionally? The validation that she was strong, that she was doing the right thing, that there were still good people in the world, it meant more than all the gift cards combined. Emma had finished her cinnamon roll and was working on her hot chocolate, leaving a whipped cream mustache that made Sarah smile despite her tears. Her daughter had been through so much in her short life, had witnessed things no child should see, had learned to be quiet and invisible in her own home. But here, in this coffee shop, with her pink coat and her crooked hat, she was just a happy little girl enjoying a treat. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Emma asked, her blue eyes wide with concern. "Because I'm happy, baby," Sarah replied, wiping her cheeks. "Because there are still angels in the world." As they ate their breakfast, the first real meal they'd had in days, Sarah couldn't help but glance over at David occasionally. He worked steadily on his laptop, occasionally sipping his coffee, seemingly oblivious to the life-changing impact he'd just had on 2 strangers. But Sarah suspected he knew. She suspected this wasn't his first time being someone's angel. When they finished eating, Sarah carefully packed the remaining cinnamon roll into a napkin for later. Emma had fallen asleep in her chair, exhausted from their morning walk and full from the first time in days. Sarah sat there for a long moment, watching her daughter's peaceful face, feeling the weight of the gift cards in her pocket, and making a decision. She slowly stood, adjusted her crutches, and made her way over to David's table. He looked up as she approached, his expression open and kind. "Thank you," Sarah said simply, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how you knew, but thank you. You didn't just buy us breakfast, you gave me hope." David's eyes glistened slightly. "My mother used to say that we're all just walking each other home. Sometimes the path is dark, and sometimes we need someone to light the way for a few steps. You're going to be okay. You're already halfway there." "How did you know?" Sarah asked quietly. "The way you positioned yourself between your daughter and the door. The way you counted your money 3 times before putting your wallet away. The way you flinched when that man's chair scraped the floor behind you. The way you look at her, with fierce love and protective instinct. My mother had the same look when we escaped. It's the look of a lioness protecting her cub." Sarah nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "The card has my information," David continued. "If you need help with custody, protection orders, anything, call me. If you don't, that's okay too. But know that you're not alone. There's a whole network of survivors in this city who help each other. You just have to reach out." Sarah thanked him again and returned to her table, where Emma was beginning to stir. As they prepared to leave, bundling up against the December cold that seemed less bitter now, Sarah caught David's eye one more time. He raised his coffee cup in a silent salute, and she smiled, a real smile, the first in months. Outside, the winter sun had broken through the clouds, casting everything in golden light. Sarah held Emma's hand as they walked, her crutches steady beneath her, the gift card secure in her pocket, and a business card that represented possibility clutched in her other hand. That night, in their tiny room at the shelter, after Emma had fallen asleep, Sarah looked at David's card again. Tomorrow, she would call him. Tomorrow, she would start the legal process to ensure her ex-husband could never hurt them again. Tomorrow, she would use those gift cards to buy Emma a winter coat that fit properly and food to fill their small refrigerator. But tonight, she simply whispered a prayer of thanks for strangers who became angels, for coffee shops that became sanctuaries, and for the kindness that reminded her that the world still held more light than darkness. She made a promise to herself that one day, when she was on her feet again, literally and figuratively, she would be the stranger who changed someone's life in a coffee shop. She would pay forward the miracle she had received. Because that's what David had given them, not just breakfast and gift cards, but a miracle. The miracle of hope renewed, of faith in humanity restored, of the knowledge that they would survive this chapter and write a better one. And for a woman who had forgotten what hope felt like, that was the greatest gift of all. This heartwarming story teaches us several profound lessons about humanity and compassion that resonate deeply in our often disconnected world. The power of observation and empathy. David's ability to recognize Sarah's struggle through subtle signs, her protective stance, careful money counting, and fearful reactions, reminds us that true kindness begins with paying attention. Many people around us are silently suffering, and a moment of awareness can change everything. Kindness requires no reason. David didn't need to know Sarah's full story to help. He saw a need and responded with generosity, teaching us that compassion shouldn't wait for complete understanding. Sometimes, the most meaningful help comes from strangers who expect nothing in return. Breaking the cycle through gratitude. David's own childhood experience of receiving help motivated him to pay it forward. This illustrates how one act of kindness can create a ripple effect across generations, transforming victims into helpers and spreading hope exponentially. Dignity in giving. David's approach, offering help respectfully, maintaining distance, and providing resources without judgment, shows that how we give is as important as what we give. True charity preserves the recipient's dignity and empowers rather than diminishes them. Small acts, enormous impact. A breakfast and some gift cards might seem modest, but they restored Sarah's hope and faith in humanity. This reminds us that we don't need wealth to make a difference, just awareness, compassion, and willingness to act when opportunities arise.